So the suppression of our inner senses and the illusory divisions of self start at a very young age. Because we're born into sort of a social norm, we're born into a social program, a social cultural matrix, and hence we are given various social, cultural, and religious programs which demonize our animal nature as dirty and bad, or the root of all evil, or the fall of man, and essentially as an enemy and something which we need to suppress and control. And these essentially have us regard as everything which comes out of our body as being dirty or gross, while also installing guilt, fear, shame, and anxiety for any and every sexual exploration. So in essence, we basically are born into this system and this matrix of programs which essentially demonize and reject our animal nature and suppress and reject our sexuality. Now, this creates a pretty big problem and a pretty major source of imbalance and dis-ease, because in essence, our animal nature and our sexuality are the very root of our life force or our chi energy. So when we take on these false programs, these programs thus block and distort our energy flow by creating physical and psychological hang-ups. So on the physical level, they create various muscular tension patterns, muscular armoring patterns, etc. In the groin area and the hips. And that's one thing. If you're at all familiar with yoga, if you've ever tried yoga or do any sort of stretching, then you see how tight people are in the hips, mostly in Western cultures for a lot of different reasons, but primarily in practically this. So these psychological and physical hang-ups create distortions in the flow of our energy, in the flow of our life force. You might think, dude, that's some whack, hippie, like New Age nonsense. So to ground it and to really illustrate it, let's think about this. How good do you feel when you feel anxious or worried or depressed or angry or really nervous and upset? Generally, when we experience these emotions, we feel tight and we feel wound up. Now, if you think about it, what's happening when you feel muscular tension and tightness and you feel wound up in the body? Basically, that's impeding the flow of fluids in the body. Because, if you look at my arm, it's a system of, there's blood vessels, and there's lymphatic ducts, and there's all sort of fluids and tubes running through my hand. If I basically take something and wrap it around my wrist and tourniquet my wrist, I'm blocking the flow of fluids, and everything down from that is not going to be receiving nourishment, is thus eventually going to die. So if we think about this, we constantly have our neck like this, our posture is constantly like this. Think about what's happening to our organs. They're being compressed and depressed and suppressed, thus not getting the flow of fluids which they need. So essentially we can see if we have distorted psychological patterns which manifest as physical patterns as well, it's creating distorted flow of fluids in the body. Hence, that's exactly what I was just talking about. So if we have that on one end, how we feel when we're sort of bound up and wound up and tight. But on the other end, we look at how do we feel when we're, with a loved one, or watching our favorite movie, or listening to our favorite song, or walking in nature, or walking on the beach, or listening to the ocean. We generally feel just much more relaxed and calm. So obviously, as a result of that, we're getting much better flow of these fluids and these circulations that I'm talking about. So hopefully that illustrates all of that and makes sense. So then from there, it's common that we find ourselves in a common, in sort of impossible paradox and double bind situation, wherein we regard the very things which make up our nature, the very things which connect us to nature, and thus supply us with nourishment. We regard these things as an enemy, something to be avoided, something to be suppressed and controlled and depressed. Now obviously you can see how that basically creates massive division both in the inner world and the outer world. So what I mean by that is we're saying, oh, this part of me is okay and good, but this part of me is bad and I have to control it, I have to suppress it, I have to get rid of it because it's the root of all evil, it's the fall of man, it's dirty, it's bad, it's shameful, it makes me feel guilty, all of these things. So once we're at this point, once we've inherited all these programs and really embodied them, this is where religions and most spiritual disciplines sort of fit in like a lock, or like a key in a lock, meaning it just fits in like a perfect fit. So essentially what these religions and spiritual things are claiming is that we can just have redemption. We can have that sense of wholeness, or we can have that sense of enlightenment or spiritual this or that if we just develop our higher nature by following their rules, regulations, disciplines, virtues, etc. Yet, obviously, my question is that we can see that following this broken set of programming can really only produce short-lived and limited results. Because it's kind of like if you're driving your car and you're flooring it, but you're also flooring the brake pedal, how far are you really going to go before your car is just going to break down? Not that far. So then how can we really expect much results, much positive change and transformation when we're constantly rejecting our bodies and the various aspects of ourselves as inferior? Because basically what that does is sets up a life script where we're constantly battling and controlling ourselves. So my question is, how and why can we misconstrue this as having anything to do at all with real health, personal growth, spiritual development, whatever you want to call it? So really my answer is anything that's demonizing our animal nature and dividing us up into superior and inferior aspects and developing one at the expense of the other has little or nothing to do with real health, real longevity, vitality, or spiritual growth. And to me, it's obvious and unfortunate that so many programs and approaches and paradigms are really just exactly that. They're basically starting off with this fundamental thing of this part of you is good, this part of you is bad. If you just develop this part of yourself at the expense of this, then maybe you'll get the carrot at the end of the tunnel, or you'll get the cheese at the end of the maze. So hopefully all of these things which we've broken down sort of step by step, systematically, and sort of formulaically have been enlightening and opening doors and opening questions in your mind. Because if you're watching this video expecting me to say, here's A plus B, step 1, 2, 3 for exactly what you should do, here's the prescription, you're probably disappointed at this point because you thought, oh, he's going to tell me exactly 1, 2, 3 how I can reconnect with my inner child and with nature and all those things. And honestly, you know, that's a subject for a different conversation, a different video. But the point is that through understanding the things and thinking about and digesting and breaking down the ideas which we've gone over in this video, that opens doors in your mind, that opens ideas and pathways which we're not accessing. And if this is stirring you and motivating you to ask questions and see things differently, then that's the point. Because out of that different perspective, out of those questions, answers will come, perspectives will be seen, windows will be opened, which can then lead to the things that we're wanting to bring in or attract or manifest or embody, or however you want to verbalize that or conceptualize that. So hopefully that's been helpful. If you have any questions or comments, post them below, and I'll talk to you soon.